experimentado experto internacional con más de 25 años de experiencia profesional en evaluación y manejo del riesgo de desastres y cambio climático. Es el fundador y el consultor principal de Rodel Risk Solutions en Toronto, Canadá. Y es un profesor adjunto y asesor senior del Centro de Excelencia para Evaluación de Riesgos y Manejo de Riesgos en Shanghai, el CERAM Shanghai, que también será presentado mañana. En la Universidad normal de Shanghai en China. Del 2008 a 2016, el doctor Yan trabajó como un especialista de programa en evaluación y manejo del riesgo para el PNUD en Ginebra. Trabajamos juntos, estaba en mi grupo con el GRIP. Le conozco muy bien, es una persona de excelente calidad, tanto profesional como humana. Y ha provisto asesoría a más de 45 países, especialmente en países en desarrollo. Antes de unirse al PNUD, el doctor Yang era un consultor independiente del Banco Mundial, de una municipalidad en Canadá y de Focus Humanitarian Assistance en Tayikistán. Fue un investigador científico en la Universidad de Tübingen en Alemania y un catedrático en la Universidad Normal del Este de China. El doctor Yan tiene un doctorado de la Universidad de Tübingen en Alemania, un máster de la Universidad de China, normal del Este de China, y su grado de ingeniería de la Universidad de Tongji en China también. Con esta introducción quisiera darle la bienvenida. So, with this short introduction, Jianping, I would like to welcome you to this seminar, and thank you for your participation and support to this effort. Please start your presentation.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Carlos. Thank you very much for the introduction. And good morning, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to share my experience and in the National Disaster Risk Assessment in Uganda.
Jianping, we are seeing, I think, the other screen. It shows the current slide plus the next slide. Can you put in
what do you see, right? Not the first slide, right?
No, we see the first slide and on the side, the next slide.
Okay, let me swap.
Yes, I think.
So right now it's okay.
And now it's okay. Yep. Yeah. Thank you very much.
I'm going to introduce the process of the whole project, from background, objective, and scope, methodology framework, implementation, and the key outputs. Okay. First, is the Uganda. Actually, is the East Central Africa country, and this is landlocked countries. And they are also located in Ecuador, like Ecuador. And this is two maps show the location of Uganda and also the topography of Uganda. And first is about the project background. As many countries, Uganda, is also moving as in 2017, right? There is moving the disaster management paradigm from like a traditional emergency response to focus on the managing disaster risk within development. And actually over past years, we talk about disaster risk management. Most part we talk about the disaster management. It really is talk about, but it really is manage risk within development process. And then they want to do national disaster risk assessment and to generate evidence base, for the climate and disaster risk reduction planning. And of course, they want all the results presented as a national atlas, including hazard, vulnerability, and the risk. And because you're going to use this atlas as kind of instrument tool for facilitating mainstreaming disaster and the climate risk management into development planning and also contingency planning at the national and local level. And then UNDP and Uganda, they just establish a project and implement this project. And also, because they also commissioned by the Office of Prime Minister to develop a national methodology for risk-informed development at a sub-national level as well. And of course, they want this process is also like extensive stakeholder engagement, such as ministries, agencies, organizations. This is a project background. And then the objective in the national disaster risk assessment, they want to develop, first of all, develop standard disaster risk assessment methodology for the country to do the related disaster risk assessment in the country, and which can be like informed prioritization of risk reduction and allocate the resources. And also they want the national risk assessment will be useful to track change in the risk over time and provide guidance for planning, physical and the social development, and also use the information for disaster management as well. This is overall national disaster risk assessment objective in Uganda. And the scope. In Uganda, they like choose 7 major hazards: earthquake, landslide, flood, drought, windstorm, and hailstorm and lightning. Of course, they have other hazards and threats as well, but for this time, they just consider 7 major hazards. And element at the risk are almost like include all the element at the risk or all the sectors. They identify 14 sectors. And elements at the risk grouped in 5 groups, like social population groups, divided by gender, age, and poverty, employment, etc. And also residential buildings, construction and dividing 2 types. And the facilities in infrastructure include schools, hospitals, and the police stations, low energy, like information and communication technology. And they also consider like natural resources, like land, protected area, and water, biodiversity facility, and also the livelihood, like crops livelihood. This is actually it's a very comprehensive risk assessment, and they also include the users beneficiaries, like almost everybody in the country, which is national authorities, agency, right, general and line ministries, national, international organizations, private sector, academic institutions, media, and the general public. This is more or less about the background. And right now, I just want to elaborate a little more about the methodology framework for national disaster risk assessment. First, I want to give you a little bit background is that this is UNDP supported national risk assessment. It got over since 2005. And I think 2016, when I left UNDP, they got provided countries to do the national risk assessment through the Global Risk Identification Program, which at that time, Carlos Villasis, like, is the project coordinator. And we're working together and to provide almost 42 countries to do national risk assessment. And the Uganda, you can see, because Uganda actually, this is work is 2017. Even I left UNDP. After that, I worked with UNDP Uganda to finish. And the other part, we actually supported through global risk identification program. And recently, there's two other initiatives have occurred in China and Mongolia. In China, which is also the start this year, they are called the National Risk Census, which is apparently is the natural disaster risk assessment. Tomorrow, Professor Jiahong Wen will give you more details about how the CELAM Shanghai, support the national risk assessment in Shanghai. Okay. And Mongolia is also ongoing, and which currently I working as a team leader. This is funded by ADB project of help Mongolia to develop national risk assessment and also provincial disaster risk assessment. This is the slides I just want to show you over past 15 years. 15 years. How the national disaster risk assessment has been done in globally. And this one to show you the national disaster risk assessment, the conceptual framework. In reality, when you work on the national disaster risk assessment, and we consider their drivers: climate change, environment degradation, resource depletion, and the population growth and urbanization. Right, these are drivers of all kinds of risk. And then we consider apparently almost all the hazards. Try our best, and then we aggregate all the information to the administration unit from bottom level to up, because the national risk assessment profile developed is aggregable from vertically and also horizontally, by different hazards or by different sectors, by different elements. And the exposure mapping, as I mentioned, the target is almost 5, 6 groups of elemental risk, and and also they are calculated the vulnerability and the damageability if the hazard map, intensity map available, and then also estimate what is the maximum value, exposure value, exposed to different hazards. And this is all more or less of the contextual framework of national disaster risk assessment. And the bottom one is because at the end of the national risk assessment, we are supposed to produce a very comprehensive national risk profile, which is multi-hazard and multi-elements. And in another way, we call somehow we call the national risk assessment as a national risk census. And build on this one, we further can support the development of a sector risk profile, and support the development of disaster risk profile, which is event-based, and also a probabilistic risk profile. Right, this is for the specially designed for disaster risk financing purpose. And why I want to highlight the national risk census. In reality, this is the terminology is a company new. I think the first time mentioned is in 2017 when I started to support the national disaster risk assessment in Uganda, because as before you say, when through the global program, we provide support to many countries into the national disaster risk assessment. Somehow, some country, they cannot finish implement the project, or some country they develop a very comprehensive risk assessment like Laos, like Rwanda, but unfortunately this information never be used. And that's why I just think about, this information really is not linked to development. And then have an idea, national disaster risk assessment should be implemented within the national census system. And this is why we create a name called the National Risk Census, and get the national stakeholder fully understand what is the nature of national disaster risk assessment. And this is why we it started 2017. I think this is the first word it comes. If you can search it Google, most probably national risk census, the name is started using in 2017 as an integral part of national census. And then after over past years, I also try to work in the Laos and also Mongolia to promote this concept. And in China, for example, they adopt this concept. and initiated the first national risk census, very comprehensive, very detailed, in 2000. Actually, it's last year, like 2019. And you can see, because if we use like a national risk census, and then people were very easy to understand, what's the nature of the risk census. And this diagram show you, for example, in many countries, they want to develop a national or the local or the sector development strategy, action plans, and the programs, right? They need conduct different like census, like natural resources census, agricultural census, and housing population census, or many other sector census. And the same token apply to risk assessment as well. We should like develop a national like a risk profile, and feed into the national, local, and the sector disaster risk management or realization strategy, action plans, and the program projects. And as we know, the Sendai framework, right? One indicator is request each country should develop the national DRR strategy and also local DRR strategy as indicators. Okay, and this is why we need to develop a national risk census to understand what is the real risk issue in each country. And okay, right now we're going to elaborate a little more about the national DRR and resilience strategy, because here you can see this is requested by Sendai framework, right? And of course, each country should have such a kind of strategy to guiding their DRR action plan. And in many cases, even UNSDR itself, like they develop a so-called guidelines for the disaster risk reduction strategy. And they don't like include these two things called DRR and the resilience strategy. In reality, mainly the strategy is only focused on resilience part. They really don't too much address the risk issues. This is a big drawback of the national DRR strategy. And then you can see when you talk about national DRR strategy, you should like include this three component, because when you look at almost all the national DRR strategy by far in the different country, they only include these three components: enable environment, without policy, legal, and then resilience strategy, and also capability development and resources. Okay, and they never very clear defined what is disaster risk hotspot. This is almost all by far 99% of national DRR strategy missing. Okay, and then because it really just like colors used to be they want to talk, we are sick, but we just take a lot of medicine without knowing what's the real issues. Just take out the medicine and for different kind, but we don't know what the issue exists. Okay, this is the one where I want to share with you about the national DRR strategy. And in reality, when you develop a national DRR strategy, and there's four like a building block. First is actually we should understand what is national actual risk issue or the resilient issues, right? And this is a fundamental block. And then we can consider what is the three like international global agenda. On the right-hand side is Sendai framework, seven like global targets and 4 priorities. On the left-hand side is SDG, 10 goals and 25 target related to disaster risk. And then the top one is climate change. In reality, right now, when we do like a national DRR strategy, only work on the Sendai framework, and really don't too much address like SDG and actual like national like, risk. On the right-hand side, I just want to show you an example. I supported the Liberian, another like Africa country in Liberia to develop national DRR and resilience strategy. And this is the first time, address what's the real risk issues. Based on the very simple preliminary national disaster risk assessment. And there's one like at least one goals to specify what is the risk we want to focus on to reduce. And you can see, we defined like a strategy focus on the right-hand side. You will say what is the hazard point area we want to focus? What is the risk like a hotspot we want to focus? And which sector we should want to focus? And also the element at the risk we want to focus. And then this like diagram, the first, the strategy also defined what is the local like counties and also vulnerable communities. And this is the unique like features in this strategy. So, and right now I want to talk a little bit more, what's the key component of national disaster risk assessment? Apparently, there's a 4 like integrated component if we want to talk about the national disaster risk assessment. The first building block, we have to develop a national data infrastructure to to integrate all the existing maps and georeference all the elements at the risk, and identify the vulnerability information of each like element at the risk, and also try to identify replacement prices for each element at risk, and also other like a series-based map like geology and the boundaries and the satellite image, DN model, and because why is like this? When as we know that national risk census should be done periodically, right? Whenever you need, and this is why we need a strong like robust national data infrastructure to build, and also we need a methodology framework, right? To cover how we are going to prepare hazard map, how we are to do like vulnerability modeling of element at risk, like vulnerability model. I think yesterday somebody already talked about the physical vulnerability modeling for extreme events. In reality, we also modeling vulnerability of social groups, modeling physical vulnerability of buildings, and modeling the vulnerability of critical facility like a school, like a road, and also modeling the vulnerability of resources, natural resources like land, water, and because they use different indicators to define their vulnerable level. And also we have to define very clear a hotspot, risk hotspot, right? And of course geographically, and also the time seasonality. And also just in case the need, and also the data available, we should be able to calculate the damageability, which is we generally call the like damage functions. And then we also to prepare the replace like price matrix, and the last one is we have to present the risk information in a meaningful way and for the user easily to understand. This is the methodology framework for disaster risk management. And at the end of like risk assessment, and they should develop a very comprehensive national exposure database. Okay, and later we talk a little bit more about the structure of the national exposure database. This is a fundamental information database for any kind of DRR planning. And based on the national exposure database, this is the last level is how to present all the information in terms of different perspective view. I think it is a mistake here. In reality, the second one should be element at risk, like by sector, by elements at risk, and also by jurisdiction, and also by hazard, and for different purpose. This is like a 4 component or the 4 outputs of national disaster risk assessment. And here, because we talk a little bit more about the National Risk Atlas. This is the information product of the National Disaster Risk Assessment. And here you can see the National Risk Atlas should be integrated solutions for integrating existing risk information in the country, because over past like almost 2 decades, and a lot of risk assessment has been done at the national level, by sector, and also local level, and information just scattered everywhere by different like sectors, by different institutions, and by different hazards, and really nobody to bring them together. And this is why the National Risk Atlas first is a good solution to integrate all the information. And then the second one is how to standardize the risk information visualization. because all the information should be like presented in really user-friendly way, also in link to decision making. And this is second one. And of course, use this one to fostering risk-informed decision making in both development planning and disaster management planning. This is like the main purpose of National Risk Atlas. And this one is the National Risk Atlas, Rwanda. And we support Rwanda to develop through the GFDR project. At that time, Carlos and myself, we actually apply funding for the country from the GFDR. And this atlas had been produced, I think it is 2015, right? And the next one is Atlas of Uganda, and the both like Atlas you can download through the link embedded, or you can use Google to search. That you can get this document open freely and open. Okay. And another one is I just talk about is the national database is a critical like the product of national disaster risk assessment or the national risk census, and the national risk exposure like a database has at least like 6 applications. Firstly, you can continue to support evidence-based risk assessment and disaster impact analysis. And the second one is very important for risk-informed development, public investment, and DRR like planning. And also they can use it for critical infrastructure protection and asset management, which is risk informed. And also to shaping like disaster responsive like social protection like the mechanism. And this database also can be used for planning early warning system, disaster preparedness, and emergency response. And the last one is the information with use the disaster risk financing and insurance, because the database will contain the information, the maximal, the exposed like value to different hazards. This look like an insurance company. They have also maximum exposure value, right? And this is the information can provide for the country to set up a disaster risk financial schema. And this is the methodology framework. And the national disaster risk, the core like work product should be risk profile, which is at 3 levels. First, depend on the information available. Because first, we can create an exposure profile. And just in case we have more information and more like a function, like fragility functions and damageability matrix, we can develop a damageability profile. And then we can, if we know the value of the element at risk, and we are able to calculate the potential loss, they express in the monetary value. This is generally we call the risk profile. We have 3 like different level of information. And around this, everything is talk about the methodology, and we should develop, for example, we should develop a probabilistic hazard models for the country, like GM, Global Earthquake Model. They develop a probabilistic earthquake models for different countries. And we have to develop like probabilistic flood models with different return period. And the middle one, you have to develop the models for vulnerability of different elements, and also develop like georeference all the element at risk, right, in the GIS. And with the 3 set of information, the first thing we can do is we can calculate the exposure profile. And then if we get like a good like a fragility function or the damageability matrix, we can calculate what's the damage, like how like buildings against earthquake, building against like flood, building against wind, and so on. Okay. And the last one is how we are going to visualize the information, actually generally in the 4 ways. The first one in tabular, right? And the second one is presented as a risk curve. And also we can present the information as a risk matrix. And the last one is present all the information in the risk map to define the like a hotspot by jurisdiction or by geography. And such kind of process is in line with like the risk assessment process specified in the ISO 31000. And the bottom one, three, like the blue bar, to show you the process specified in the ISO 31000, like risk identification, risk analysis, and the risk evaluation. This is the methodology framework specific for disaster risk assessment. And you know that ISO 31000, like 31010, which talk about risk assessment techniques. And they don't specify the techniques for disaster risk assessment. And this like the meet the gap of the ISO 31000. And here we talk about a little bit the national data infrastructure. What kind of information should like include in the national data infrastructure? And generally, national the data infrastructure should be consist of three sets of information. One is basic data, which is basic data like historic event catalogs, disaster damage loss database, demographic data, which is generally census data, and socioeconomic data, disaster relief data, it's base data, and also base maps, DM models, satellite image, zonation and boundaries, and the various like geologic, hydrologic, meteorologic, climatologic data. This is basic data. And in immediate data, which I mentioned, this like has the maps and the georeference data set of elemental risk, vulnerability indicators, or the response price, which is specifying we are developed through the National Disaster Risk Assessment. And then the information product, which is hazard zonation map, risk map, disaster scenarios, evidence-based risk profile and portfolio, and presented in as like atlas or the e-platform. Okay, this is the information or data composition of our national data infrastructure. And this is just to give you a background overview about the National Disaster Risk Assessment, the key component, the methodology covered. And right now, I just want to spend several minutes to talk about the project implementation. And firstly, in this implementation structure, and we have practiced this structure over past 15 years, since 2005, through the GRIP program. And right now, we found that such kind of structure is very effective, to how to engage a stakeholder in different way. Okay, and of course, the top one, when you do like a national disaster risk assessment, you should have a very strong leadership. This is very, very critical for the national disaster risk assessment or the risk census work. Without this part, really very difficult to promote, because we are going to involve every access to this way. And the UNDP really is a very good international organization, and to promote a coordination, facilitation by far, we know. And if, for example, we engage, because I also have experience with ADB as well, and because their country presence is not very strong, and really have a difficulty in the coordination at the national level. And of course, and in the national level, the counterpart, the national authority, should be also active engaged, especially in the Uganda. The OPM, Department of Disaster Management, is also very active to facilitate, coordinate, and engage the stakeholder. This is also very important. And then we got the bottom one is actually the implementation team. And in Uganda, because consists only three consultant, one international consultant, myself, and provide overall guidance and technical support, and leading the two national consultants. One is national risk information specialist, another one is risk assessment specialist, who is really strong in the GIS. And then further, we divide all the we have established three working groups. One is working on the national data infrastructure, I engage all the stakeholders to contribute all the data. The second group is working on the hazard risk mapping. And we also organize a lot, a series like a sub-working group working on the different hazards. And the last one is working on the risk atlas production. And on the right hand side called the MAGs is a ministry, agency, or committees. And this is listed in our as our partner. And on the left-hand side, we also establish a technical advisor group, which is provide some input and review and provide guidance, you know, where we can find the information, how we have to do like a national level hazard mapping. And this is the structure for to secure, ensure the successful implementation of national disaster risk assessment. And this is want to show you the subgroup in this involved in the national disaster risk assessment. As we said, you know, you need a coordination management team, you need like a consultant team, and also like need a GIS support team from university, and a technical working group and the technical advisor. And on the right hand side, you will see all the people, individual involved in this like process. And like a technical advisor group is 21 people from different from the different like agency, and the coordination management is from like OPM office and plus UNDP. You can see this is almost 10 people. Consultant team is only 3, and we have 11 like interns from university to do all the GIS work. And then we have a technical working group, almost 25 people to working together to develop all the hazard maps for like 7 hazards. And the project implemented in the start like 2017 May and finished like in September 2008, almost like 18 months. Originally designed is 12 months, and because there's so many reasons they have extended the project. And of course, we spent like almost 2 months get the prepared work, and the prepared work, you know, how to build a team, to do country situation analysis and develop methodology, and mobilize the stakeholder engagement and so on. And then we got stage 2. We almost spent like I think this is 8 months, you know, to develop hazard maps and also georeference all the data. And then we spent another like 4 months to develop a risk profile and mapping. And then we spent almost 2 months to develop a national risk atlas. This is the stage. And this is show you overall like a work plan. Because right now I'm not sure how many minutes remaining. Right now, I just want to just introduce a little bit like the details, the key outputs of the NDIA in Uganda.
Yeah. How long do you need? We are reaching the end of the.
Okay, give me several more minutes. I just show you several things and finish. Okay.
Okay.
Because you can look at all the like content, you know, of Atlas by downloading the file. I don't need getting through. Maybe I just want to show you one, like maybe 1 more, 2 more slides. Okay. And this is a launch ceremony, and of course I'm not able to attend this like launch ceremony. This should be the president of Uganda, Prime Minister of Uganda, and then the content, and you can see the Atlas, they have like 7 chapter, and chapter like 3 is hazard profile, chapter 4 is exposure, chapter 5 is vulnerability, and then 6 is risk profile, and the last one is disaster risk reduction options. And they give a complete set of information and knowledge for the user to use this Atlas. Okay. And I don't want to get in details about what is the structure of the hazard profile. I will leave this PowerPoint presentation for you to read after workshop. This is, and also you can see, you know, how we, you know, to define the vulnerability model for social group, for buildings, for critical infrastructure. Here, I just want to highlight our national exposure database. You can see, when this is the overall structure of the national exposure database. This is very critical. Really, you want to manage your country risk in the long term. First is a total exposure, which is without considering any vulnerability information. On top, VA, VB, and VC, and VD, and VE. This is, we are going to classify all the elements at the risk in the different five vulnerability level, and then build into the database. Okay, the database right now you cannot see very detailed. The organized structure, it covers the multi-hazard, multi-elemented risk, multi-vulnerability level, and then aggregable from district level to provincial level to national level. This is overall the national exposure database structure. And then you can see the last one is the national data infrastructure for Uganda, and manage all the information in the GIS. But right now they don't move this information to be accessible in the public domain. But we already recommend, they can archive all the information using GeoNote. This kind of free open soft, open source to share all the georeferenced information. And I think is the last one is that I just want to highlight before I close my my presentation tomorrow. My colleague, partner in China, Professor Jia Hong, will introduce Ecuador, Selam Shanghai, and maybe his experience is very useful how to develop Ecuador, Selam Ecuador, and this is the product and service, what I'm currently doing. And because I use this framework also to support the development of Selam Shanghai, Anyway, because this is why I think this is also very important for you to maybe I think they're useful for you to develop Selam Ecuador. On the left-hand side, have a country integrated data, and establish actionable risk information, whatever through the Risk Atlas or the NDO, National Disaster Observatory, which is also part of the GRIP product. This is also the next generation of this inventor. And on the right-hand side is systematically, to integrate all that knowledge exists in the country to build the knowledge portal. And also we try to use National Risk Atlas, building handy toolkits for decision making. And the ultimate goal is build a national risk informed decision support process. In reality, Selam Shanghai right now is functioning this way. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. I will stop here, and right now I'm ready to take any questions related to my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jianping. Let me, please give me a few minutes to try to summarize a little bit in your presentation in Spanish for the audience, okay? And then we will move to the questions. So, básicamente el doctor Yang presentó el proceso que se siguió para hacer la evaluación del riesgo a nivel nacional y a nivel provincial para Uganda, un país africano. Lo importante y lo que siempre me ha gustado de Jianping es lo metodológico, que es lo metódico, que es todo los marcos conceptuales son muy, muy claros. El trabajo viene después. Primero hay que definir el trabajo, el modelo conceptual muy, muy claramente y teniendo claras las metas. Y eso es algo que está muy claro en la presentación que él ha hecho y es una de las cosas importantes de su trabajo. Para la evaluación del riesgo de multidesastres de Uganda se consideraron 7 tipos de amenazas y una de las cosas más importantes fueron no solamente evaluar el riesgo y estimar, cuantificar las pérdidas probables y la distribución, las características del riesgo, sino también hacer un trabajo inmenso, y estoy muy al tanto de esas cosas, para integrar toda esa información que estaba diseminada en el país, que nadie la había integrado, e integrarla y crear un portal, un sistema de información nacional de riesgo que integre toda esa información de una manera organizada, ordenada y que sea fácilmente asequible para los usuarios finales. Otra de las cosas importantes de este estudio fue que no solo identificaban o cuantificaban el riesgo a nivel nacional, sino que trataron de estimar también los hotspots que llaman, las prioridades principales del país donde se debe trabajar primero, de manera que eso guíe la estrategia de implementación. O sea, si yo tengo una evaluación del daño y del riesgo que me resulta en que se identifican 100 problemas que hay que resolver, que es lo normal, o sea, hay tantas cosas por hacer, no es suficiente. No hay dinero, no hay capacidad para implementar todas esas cosas. Y es necesario desarrollar estrategias de implementación y asignar prioridades a esas acciones. ¿Qué es lo que hago primero con los fondos que yo tengo? ¿Qué necesito hacer en el corto, mediano y largo plazo? ¿Qué necesito hacer primero antes de hacer otras cosas? Y eso se usa para implementar una estrategia de implementación. Sin una estrategia de implementación, los resultados quedan ahí como reportes, o sea, nadie sabe qué hacer, por dónde empiezo, por dónde no tengo dinero para implementar todas esas cosas que se identificaron que se deben hacer. Entonces, esa es otra parte muy importante del estudio que ha presentado. Y la otra, como él lo indicaba, es la creación del Atlas Nacional del Riesgo, que da una información, hace todos estos resultados de fácil acceso para todos los usuarios y escogiendo perfiles de riesgo, presentaciones del riesgo que asistan a diferentes tipos de aplicaciones. Por ejemplo, riesgo financiero, riesgo de infraestructuras, riesgo agropecuario, que por ejemplo es importante en Uganda. Entonces, no es solo poner los resultados de los estudios en un reporte, sino crear lo que se llama los perfiles, hacerlos presentar los resultados de una manera que sean útiles para los diferentes usuarios. La información que necesita el sector salud es muy diferente que la información que necesita el sector agropecuario o el sector financiero. Entonces, tenemos que presentar los resultados en diferentes formas, en diferentes perfiles que se llaman. Eso es muy interesante de lo que él está presentando. Entonces, es un resumen de lo que ha presentado y esperamos contar con Jianping, por supuesto, para lo que vamos a hacer en Ecuador en el futuro. Tenemos que tener una evaluación nacional de riesgo en Ecuador, que no existe. Entonces, vamos a hacer eso. Jianping.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for your patience. A few questions. And maybe you can close the
presentation.
sharing the screen so you can show your camera.
Okay.
I can see you. Okay, a few questions. One of the challenges in many countries, mainly in developing countries, in countries like ours, like Ecuador, is that there is a lot of information, as you say, but it's not integrated. It's spread out in many organizations, through universities, agencies, ministries, and nobody knows even what's available. But one of the main problems is people don't want to share that information. One agency doesn't want to give the information to the other agency. One university doesn't want to share their data to another university and these kind of things. So you built the risk information system there in Uganda and put everything there. So how did you solve this problem of information sharing there?
That's a very interesting questions. You also had the experience when during the gripper time. Uganda, well, at beginning is very interesting is that the national consultant told me nobody want to share the information. Really, they don't understand what is the national risk assessment all about. And even right now in Mongolia, people will treat us, this is a consultant's work. And then I always, even the Laos, because last year I finished one project in Laos, the same. People always treat this kind of work as consultant's work. You come here, you're so-called to do like a national risk assessment in the country and produce a report and go. In reality is that we have to address the national risk assessment or at last you develop is the public goals of the country. It's not our product. It's actually I support like OPM to develop product, and then because I'd also give the second point is that we have to give the sufficient credit to everybody. In reality, we promote their product, right? The position that they are positioned very strongly, as a data provider in the country. In the future, whatever, because we cannot give them the source, right, to do the work. But in the future, just in case, for example, the international organization that running the project in the country, right? They are going to offer service to them. They can earn the additional resources from offer a data information service, right, to the other international organization, right, in the project, right? This is the way, And we actually follow this way, and very interesting. When I run in the first international national stakeholder, because in Uganda, actually I organize 4 national stakeholder workshop. The first one just introduce and the scoping, and really people they don't understand what we are talking about. And then after workshop, and ask the national consultant to collect the data, and they come back to us, to me. They say, we are very difficult to get even the census data. Right, census that should be access to everybody, right? And then because I just ask them to explain to this one, we develop the product is for the country, it's not for ourselves. We actually support your work, right? And then the very interesting is that when the second workshop when running, the attitude is already changed, especially the third national workshop and a lot of institutions very proactively offer the data. And then you can see after the fourth national work, I think they are completely own the ownership. And you can see the National Atlas actually launched actually at the beginning of this year, 2021. It's already almost 2.5 years past. And you can see the country, they still remember this one and officially launched National Atlas. Of this process, there's an 18 months process. The first achievement is not like the product itself. Actually, the national capacity is over there. 2 national consultants have fully understand what is the risk assessment all about. And all the stakeholder is engaged, especially I think, for future, they want to update how's the map. They already how they do it by themselves. And the third one is complete ownership of National Atlas. And it's already one, it's a pity is that, this also linked to the UNDP project because they're not consistent. In reality, we have to use this information to develop a national DR strategy, but they don't have further resources to continue. And then right now, at end, very good report put on the shelf.
Yeah, that's a shame. Another important thing is it's not only the information. The society, the community is a system.
Yeah.
That works with all of these parts. So nobody's living in isolation. So a hospital without water supply cannot work.
Yeah.
A school without roads or the agriculture sector without roads to take the products to the market, they don't work. The problem is that they don't work together. they never work together. You know, the hospitals work by themselves. Everybody is in their corner, in their domain. And one of the opportunities of doing these projects in which, you know, a disaster affects everybody is an opportunity to bring all of them to work together, because everybody benefits from this. So how was the experience there? There was a progress in the collaboration among the institutions and integrations of their work. There was progress in strengthening the institutional framework.
Institutional framework is actually, you know, what happened that we just initiated. I don't know it's a continued development or not, because this is why the lack of any like institution like SILAM. And if you talk about the institution development, I think the SILAM Shanghai is a very good example. And almost 10 years, right? Started 2011, we initiated like SILAM Shanghai. 10 years later, the SILAM becomes the renowned like institute in the country. Even the Minister of Emergency Management right now looking for approach SILAM for support, because they really accept our like ideology. And this is another one I highlight. You know, SILAM mechanism is very important to really shift like the disaster preparedness, disaster management, preempt to risk management. Okay, because this is like not part of government structure, and then they have their own like good mentality, you know, to promote risk management. This I want to highlight. SILAM Shanghai is a good example to do like institution capacity development. And this kind of model also happened in the like Dominica, because they established like additional like institutions. I think Carlos just lost connection. Yeah, this is my experience I want to share with you related to institution capacity development. I just see, you know, I mentioned the last point I mentioned is in Dominica. Okay, I think in 2019, the established called CRED is also like the independent like institution to implement all the climate resilience project in the country, and this like the similar function like SILAM. Okay, so SILAM because initiated by private, but CRED, C-R-E-A-D in Dominica, they actually initiated by the, I think the president or the prime minister, and then they will channel all the function, the service function to the CRED. And Dominica also want to establish another agency called the Risk Management, Disaster Risk Management Agency, to implement all the disaster risk management project in the country. And another model called institution capacity development, like in Bangladesh, they have a CGIS. This is because the right now it's really more like function like the SILAM Shanghai, and also you can NSET is also a good example, right?
Yes. Yeah. No, thank you very much. This just the last comment. It doesn't matter how good the work that was done in Uganda in the evaluation, how good the work is, or how nice the report is, if nothing happens after, as you, it was a waste of time.
Yeah.
So and this, and you are touching a really important point: the need to create the national capabilities for this to become a reality, for those studies to be applied and to become actual actions and policy and part of the governance. So this is what we are trying to start now. One of the main objectives of the CERAM is to create the local capabilities to ensure the sustainability of all of these efforts. A 2 years project will not solve anything.
No.
The risk in a society, in a city, in a country is the result of hundreds of years of no planning. So doing a project of 2 years doesn't solve anything. So it has to be a program with long-term plans, with long-term goals, and for that we need the capabilities and the capacities locally and the legal frameworks, institutional frameworks to make that a reality. So thank you very much, Jianping. Your example is a real inspiring thing of how countries should start, by learning and understanding their problems, putting all the information together and building the capacities for that to be the beginning of solving the situation, solving the problem.
By the way, because tomorrow, because Provide Jiahong will present the CERAM Shanghai. I think just over past 2 years, and a lot of organizations approaching the CERAM offer the projects. And even, for example, right now, CERAM Shanghai, they take like assignment for government, like in Shanghai, right? As the project technical team leader of the census in Shanghai. This is very interesting. They have real capacity offer the service right now after 10 years.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everybody. This is the end of the morning session.